Renting versus buying a home. In this video, I'm going to go through the pros and cons of renting versus owning. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know that this topic is something I hear a lot, and it's very controversial because growing up, my parents told me that renting was throwing money away. And I know I hear that a lot from people, that renting is throwing money away. You have to own because owning is the best thing you can do and it's a good investment. There's no one size fits all, and there's no one answer for every situation. Everyone's life is different, everybody has different goals, but let's get straight into this video, guys. So I pretty much grew up with the belief that, renting was throwing money away. I definitely stopped agreeing with my parents, and I came up with my own idea and thoughts on both renting and owning. What are the pros of renting? You have the mobility, the flexibility of not being tied down to a 30-year mortgage, especially for us younger millennials. I feel like nowadays, we like to travel a lot, not be tied down to one specific location, just having the ease of mind of being able to pick up your stuff and go anywhere you want and not being tied down. Pro number 2. What I really like about renting is the fact that you know exactly how to budget for the month. And what I mean by that is when you rent, you already know how much every single month is coming out of your expenses. You know if your rent is $1,000 a month, and most of the time utilities end up being around the same. So it's easier to budget, and it's not gonna inflate to like a bigger number because anything that breaks, it's all the responsibility of the landlord. Pro number 3, renting could be a good option if you scale down and live cheaper. Well, what I mean by that is, at least here in the Midwest, there's so many places you can rent out. You can rent out like someone's basement, you can rent out someone's room in their house, or you might rent out a 1-bedroom where you like share the kitchen and the common areas with other people or other tenants. But ultimately, that's the best way on saving money, because I know if I go online right now, I could find something between $350 and $600, a bedroom that I can rent out from someone's house, or even just renting out a basement. I know people personally in my area in the Midwest that have rented out a whole basement with a kitchen all to themselves for like $600 to $800. Renting, if done right, can be the cheaper option because there's so many ways to find hacks to save money. You could rent for a really low amount of money, plus sometimes utilities will be included in that rent. And if you're in it for the long haul, if you're in it to save a lot of money, it can be a good option. Con number 1 of renting is you're throwing money away. Like every single month when you're paying your rent, but you're not getting any equity out of it because it's, in essence, it's money lost. Especially if you're renting a place out that's in a really nice area and the rents are extremely high, then in essence you are throwing your money away. Con number 2, you can't customize the place, can't remodel it, you can't do a lot of things to the place. You're restricted to what the landlord says and you have to follow their rules. So a lot of times renting sucks because you want to upgrade the kitchen, or you want to change the colors in this room or that room, and ultimately you're restrained to certain guidelines and rules that you have to follow. Con number 3, there are absolutely no tax benefits of renting. A lot of people buy a place because of the tax advantages. Well, when you rent, you don't get those tax advantages. When you buy a home and you have a mortgage, you get to write off the interest and the taxes. Your tax liability goes down for the year, which means you save money come tax time. Now we're moving on to the pros and cons of owning your own house. Pro number 1, the property is yours. A big part of the American dream is to save enough money for a down payment and buy your own house. I know that was my parents' goal when they got to the United States, and ultimately I know that's a lot of people's goal. I don't know what it is, but everyone's goal is to buy their own house. It's something that you carry a lot of pride in and you just feel accomplished because you have something that's yours. Pro number 2 to owning over renting, you're building equity. With every payment you do on your property, you're paying it off over time. It's forcing you to save. So 30 or 15 years after you pay down the property, it's yours and you have equity tied into the place, and in essence, you're building net worth. Pro number 3 is basically 2 pros in 1. It's the 2-for-1 special. An advantage of owning your own primary residence is the tax breaks that you get with having a mortgage on the property. You get to write off the mortgage interest, your taxes, and it saves you money come tax time. Another thing is when you lock yourself to a 30-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage, you're pretty much locked into that same rate that you're going to be paying every single month. So you don't have to worry about that going up, kind of like when you're renting. When you're renting, the landlord can raise your rents at any time. When you're owning, you're locked in and you don't have to worry about that. Now let's talk about the cons of owning your primary residence. Con number one, the maintenance and the upkeep of the property. So a lot of times people forget that everything you own is breaking down over time, which means the more stuff you own, the more problems you have. Every single place, even if it's new, will eventually need maintenance and upkeep. Therefore, maintenance expenses can add up. Things to consider before buying a house is looking at the roof, seeing how old the windows are, checking the boiler, the water heater, the furnace, the air conditioning. You don't know what's in between the walls. You don't know if the electrical's bad. You don't know if the electrical was done wrong. How does the plumbing and drainage look? A lot of times you have old houses that have clay drainage pipes, and tree roots will get into them, or just over time the pipes will break. Next thing you know, all the drainage from your house, all the waste from your house is just backing up because you have that pipe break. And a lot of times that's expensive stuff to repair. You're looking at $3,000 to $5,000 to, I don't know, maybe $10,000 depending on who quotes you, who does the job. Con number two, you really are throwing money away. When you own a house, the way a mortgage works is you pay the majority of the interest, the majority of the life of the loan. For a good amount of years, all the money that you're paying, the majority of the money that you're paying is going to interest. And interest is just money that you're throwing away in essence. So you're barely paying off the principal. The principal is what you owe on the loan. The interest is just the money that the bank is making off of you for, giving you the loan for the house. Con number three is property taxes. Depending on the area that you live in. For example, I live in Illinois, in the Midwest, in my area. Property taxes are pretty high in some areas. So even if you pay off that mortgage early, that house is never actually going to be fully yours because you have taxes. And if you don't pay those taxes, I promise you, you will lose the property. It's just how it works. A lot of people buy homes in areas where property taxes are $10,000 every single year. So even after they do pay off their property, they're still looking at about $800 to $900 every single month that they're paying. And there's a lot of places that you can rent out for $800 to $900 or even less. In conclusion, I was trying not to sound too biased because ultimately I think that there's a strategy to everything. I think renting has its pros and cons, obviously, and so does home buying. But if you do things right, if you think outside the box, and if you analyze your situation before you jump in and figure out what's best for you, what's best with your goals. For example, if you're renting in an expensive area, then I think you are throwing money away. There's no reason to be paying thousands and thousands of dollars on rent just to be in a fancy area. Unless you have the income and you're still able to save a lot of your money, then yeah, you can afford to live in a nicer area where the rent is a little bit higher and you have more money to kind of throw away. There's no rules to renting. And like I mentioned before, as long as you're willing to sacrifice convenience, because a few years of renting and really using that to optimize your savings, it could put you ahead in life and it could just put you in a better situation than most people will ever be in their life, financial situation. Owning your primary residence, there's no issues with that. Doesn't align with my goals right now, but eventually I know I'll probably own. But I do think that people try to buy more house than they can actually afford. So if you just do things right, you get at least 20% down on the property so you don't have to pay PMI, and you have a mortgage payment that you can handle, preferably a mortgage payment that's like 1/4 of your take home. A house isn't just a mortgage payment. A house comes with a lot of responsibility, a lot of headaches at times when you have to replace new stuff, when you have to put in a new roof, new furnace, new water heater. The expenses add up. So also equity that you're building in a personal home, it's just money that you're trapping inside your house. It's money that you won't ever be able to use unless you sell the house, which what happens when you sell the house, you're gonna need another place to live in anyway. So ultimately, there's nothing wrong with renting. There's nothing wrong with owning. It depends on what your goals are. If you wanna save money, if you want to win with money, personally, I think living with your folks or living with a family member that charges you lower rent, or renting a 1-bedroom or renting a basement at a house and having someone else live with you, that way you can split the rent. Ultimately, that's the best way to build wealth. Being a homeowner, you can do things right if you buy cheap, if you don't buy in an area that has high taxes, and if you do your due diligence of inspecting the property and just knowing that one day something will break with a home. I don't care how new it is, how old it is, eventually something's gonna break. My final word is, it's your life. You do what aligns with your goals. There's nothing wrong with either thing. Renting versus buying. I gave you the pros and cons, and obviously there's way more pros and cons to each, but I didn't want this video to be like 30 minutes long. If you do have questions about renting or buying, I'll be happy to answer them in the comments below. I hope you liked the video. Please gently destroy that like button. Comment down below for the YouTube algorithm. And most importantly, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm really passionate about what I do, and I want everybody to know that you and anyone can win with money and buffer out all the noise and all the people that are trying to bring you down. You can win. You can do whatever you want in life. And until next time, see you guys in the next video.